It seems like almost everyone has the marriage blues these days. The sad truth is that marriage is unnatural to humans and always was. We evolved for tribal living, not intense one-on-one relationships, and you can still see that today. Ana de Armas could be the poster child for what's gone wrong with relationships. She tried marriage and was briefly a wife at 23, but she later admitted she wasn't ready for that kind of commitment. Now at 37, she's childless and hitting the wall. Despite the countless romantic tales and legends, marriage was actually invented as a way to control property ownership and birthrights. So it's no surprise most people struggle with it. Many men can't handle it either and crumble at the prospect. Humans have been slowly adapting to marriage, especially in parts of the world where it's been around the longest, like the Middle East and East Asia. In places like Northern Europe, Australia, and much of Africa, it came much later. But today, marriage is breaking down everywhere. Men are walking away, and once you know the history, it's easy to see why. Marriage has been popping up in different places around the world for the past 10,000 years, bringing joy and misery in equal measure. Different cultures, similar mixed results. Once people start building wealth, marriage shows up, and from the start it's been a struggle to make it work. In England a few hundred years ago, marriage was treated as a public matter. A wife was expected to obey her husband and stay in line. If she refused, she could be strapped into a ducking stool and dropped into the river again and again with everyone watching. Single women who were argumentative or disorderly faced the same punishment. In Imperial China, during the Ming and Qing dynasties, men could divorce their wives whenever it was justified. Among the potential reasons were her being disobedient or talking too much. If a wife was physically unable to work or bear children because of disease, that was grounds as well. And there was even a rule against jealousy. A wife wasn't allowed to cause trouble by resenting her husband's concubines. Another great example of the problems caused by marriage contracts comes from King Henry VIII. Desperate to get around church-based marriage laws, he broke from the Catholic Church and created the Church of England. It started with his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, who hadn't given him a son. When the Pope refused a divorce, Henry changed the religion of the country to make it happen. But even that wasn't enough to cure the king's issues with marriage. His second wife, Anne Boleyn, and his fifth, Catherine Howard, were both executed, beheaded for adultery and treason. These problems arise because human beings are not designed for such high-stakes relationships where your whole life hinges on keeping one other person happy for years on end. According to evolutionary biologist Helen Fisher, our pair bonding instincts are adapted for relationships lasting around 4 to 7 years, just long enough to have and wean a child.
We're a pair bonding animal. There must be reasons why we evolve this, why we fall in love, why we feel attached, why we break up and form new attachments to other people.
The chemistry of attraction and bonding breaks down after a while, giving room for people to potentially move on to other relationships. This is where a pattern of serial monogamy comes from. One partner for a few breeding years, then a natural shift. It's a rhythm observed across cultures and time. In pre-agricultural tribal societies, there was no way for one person to hold another hostage inside a relationship. If things broke down, the bond ended. Violence or jealousy might happen, but no one could hold a partner hostage the way marriage can today. No property was lost, no inheritance was at risk, no marriage contract or public shaming locked anyone in. People survived as part of a small group, relying on many close relationships at once. Family, allies, and other adults shared responsibility for food and raising children. You couldn't be trapped with someone ungrateful or impossible to live with. If your mate became difficult or simply stopped offering value, you didn't have to stick it out. There was no legal or financial reason to force two people to stay together if they didn't want to. The pressure was always mutual. If one person wasn't contributing, there was no reason for the other to stay. That didn't mean all relationships were short. Some couples stayed together much longer, but only when both sides kept each other satisfied. Long bonds happened because they worked, not because anyone was forced to put up with a bad deal. It wasn't about contracts or obligations. It was about two people offering value day by day in a way that made staying together worthwhile. Anthropologists observing living hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza in Tanzania or Amazonian tribes still see this same pattern. Relationships form and dissolve naturally. Sometimes they last a few years, sometimes much longer, but always by choice. No one is locked in. No one has the power to ruin someone's life through a single relationship. That's the environment human beings evolved to thrive in. Given our freewheeling tribal past, is it any wonder that marriage doesn't feel like a perfect fit? It ties us down in ways that are genuinely unnatural. Marriage is a very recent phenomenon in evolutionary terms that came about due to the spread of farming. Once people started growing crops and raising livestock, everything changed. Land and animals became wealth, something to defend, pass down, and fight over. And that created a new kind of problem. In a tribal setting, resources were shared. But in early farming communities, families wanted to keep what was theirs. If a man wasn't sure who his children were, how could he pass on his land or cattle? Without a formal system, there was chaos. Disputes over inheritance, illegitimate claims, fights between clans. Marriage stepped in as a solution. It locked women into exclusive contracts, ensuring paternity. Men provided the land, women provided the bloodline. Over time, the whole structure hardened. Family name, family property, family honor. Societies that enforced marriage rules became more stable. Strong families had clear lines of inheritance. They could hold land together, raise larger farming operations, and pass wealth from one generation to the next. Over time, those families produced surplus food, built trade networks, and laid the foundations for larger systems like taxation and early markets. This wasn't about love, it was about building and holding power. Meanwhile, groups that didn't enforce marriage rules struggled. Without stable families, wealth scattered. Fights broke out over women, children, and food. There was no incentive to create anything lasting because there was no clear system to hold it together. That's also why divorce was avoided. A broken marriage didn't just cause personal drama, it risked tearing a family apart, splitting land, livestock, and children. Stability came first. Strong families created prosperity. Disorganized tribes got left behind. From a societal perspective, there can be no doubting the historical benefits of marriage. Modern civilization was built on the bedrock of the nuclear family, which in turn relied on cultures and institutions that encouraged citizens to wed for life. But underneath the surface, what was happening to us as individuals? What does evolutionary biology say about the tensions and forces at play when a man and woman commit to lifelong partnership? What we know for sure is that some groups better tolerate being married than others. For example, divorce rates among East Asians, including Chinese, Japanese, and Korean populations, are consistently low. In Japan and South Korea, divorce rates hover around 25% or less. That's compared to over 40% across much of Europe. There's a reason for this. For centuries, East Asian families weren't just living under marriage rules, they were shaped by them. Rice farming demanded it. This staple crop isn't like wheat or cattle. Keeping a rice paddy alive takes steady labor from the whole family, season after season. That kind of pressure rewarded people who could stick it out, demonstrating persistence and long-term focus. Over generations, those traits became more common, not just as culture, but in how people are wired. In Northern Europe, agriculture arrived several thousand years after it first took hold in East Asia and the Middle East. Marriage developed alongside wheat farming and cattle herding. Social order was policed through inheritance laws and public labels like bastard for children born out of wedlock. Modern Europeans and white Americans show a middle level of marriage stability. In much of Africa, formal marriage systems arrived even later. Wealth was traditionally measured in livestock rather than land, and family ties remained more flexible. That legacy is visible today. Births outside of marriage are common, especially in African descent communities in the modern West. Although some groups are better adapted to tolerate marriage, there's a deeper truth here. Tolerance is not the same as enthusiasm. Even in East Asia, where unions are most stable and long-lasting, marriage rates are dropping. People may endure the system, but that doesn't mean it makes them happy. And to understand why being married usually becomes a chore and challenge with time, we need to first grasp what happens during the mating phase. Human beings have a powerful chemistry for pair bonding. Our ancient physiology is built to create strong attachments during the early stages of a relationship, strong enough to override doubts, push aside flaws, and lock two people together for a time. Hormones like dopamine, oxytocin, and vasopressin surge when two people form a bond. This isn't just about sex, it's about how one partner can start to feel like the answer to all your needs. Simple moments, touch, shared meals, small jokes become emotionally charged. When bonding is active, it puts both people in an altered state. You see your partner as perfect, differences seem minor, frustrations get pushed aside. Neuroscientists have mapped this early bonding phase in detail. Brain scans show the same reward centers lighting up as with drugs or gambling, but just like any high, it fades. Research on both humans and animals confirms it. The strongest bonding chemistry usually lasts several years, long enough to get through pregnancy, childbirth, and the early care of a child. During this phase, natural human instincts are deliberately suppressed. Men become more patient and attentive. Aggression and selfishness dial down. Women feel unusually loyal and focused on one partner. The instinct to look for a better deal fades into the background. That's why early relationships feel so smooth compared to what follows. Both people are living in a kind of dream, driven by biology rather than deliberate thought. It feels real. It feels like this is how things will always be. But unfortunately, the honeymoon phase always comes to an end, and this is when the true nature of a person is fully revealed. Whether anyone wants to admit it or not, each of us carries traits designed to serve our own interests, even at the expense of the man or woman we've committed to. One of the clearest is selfishness. Within a partnership, selfishness isn't limited to one or two bad habits. It's the constant pull to put yourself first. A man might withdraw from household responsibilities and focus on his own comfort. A woman might let her body go once she feels her position is secure. Both sides want control over money, time, and decisions. Disputes are inevitable because no two people value the same things equally. One sees saving as smart, the other sees it as stingy. One wants freedom, the other wants support. That tension never fully disappears. The reason is simple. Humans are not designed to immerse themselves in one relationship for life. We evolved to survive as individuals inside a clan or tribe, a group where resources, attention, and effort were shared across many people. Success didn't come from attaching yourself to one person forever. It came from balancing loyalty to a mate with loyalty to yourself and to the wider group. Marriage forces two people to take on every role for each other: provider, companion, caretaker, and support system. And humans simply haven't adapted for that kind of structure. This arrangement has only existed for a few thousand years. If it had been around for 1,000,000, we would be different creatures by now. More patient, more forgiving, less driven to push for personal advantage, but we aren't. Underneath all the stories about love and partnership, marriage is a constant negotiation between self-interest and commitment. That is the real dynamic. Two individuals, each evolved to look after themselves first, trying to hold it together as a permanent pair. The fragile nature of marriage has been exposed with the tearing down of many of the forces that pushed people into it and kept them there. Marriage is in decline. But if I had to identify the single biggest factor, an eternal force that is causing marriage to fail at present, it would be female dissatisfaction. You see, women initiate most divorces. Across Western countries, it's usually around 70%, and most of those cases aren't driven by crisis or abuse. It's because women feel they can do better, emotionally, financially, or sexually. Men, by comparison, tend to be more willing to let things continue, even if things aren't perfect. This female dissatisfaction isn't new. It's rooted in hypergamy, the instinct to seek a higher value mate. But in the past, that instinct was kept in check. Family upbringing, moral expectations, religion, and simple lack of opportunity all played a role. Divorce was difficult, costly, and carried real social consequences. Today, those breaks are gone. Feminism didn't just free women from old limits, it actively encouraged distrust toward men. Women were taught to view men as potential exploiters, to stay hyper-alert for signs of being taken advantage of, and to compete with men in status and achievement. That competition isn't attractive. It repels both sides. At the same time, constant social pressure has feminized many men, making them less decisive, less masculine, and ironically less appealing. The result is clear. A system that was already difficult to maintain now falls apart faster. Tensions that once simmered below the surface now end in open separation. And as both men and women see this pattern repeat, fewer are willing to enter marriage at all. Marriage wasn't designed for human happiness. It was designed to organize property and bloodlines. But in today's world, the psychology behind it can no longer be ignored. Female dissatisfaction, now unrestrained, has made the breakdown of marriage look inevitable. No wonder that more and more men are walking away from long-term relationships with women. Once you see the full picture, it's a simple equation. Marriage was always difficult. Now it's loaded entirely against men. In the past, even with all its flaws, marriage offered some reliability. Women stayed. A man could trust that what he built wouldn't just be torn apart on a whim. Today, that trust is gone. Women no longer feel the same pressure to maintain a household or stay loyal once dissatisfaction sets in, and the legal profession has made sure men pay the full price. Divorce lawyers and family courts strip men of their wealth through property division. They turn custody into an adversarial battle, often pushing mothers to fight for full control of the children just to gain leverage. Divorce is easier to trigger than ever, but the weight still lands on men. Returning to the old ways isn't an option. Individuals today are more physically disconnected from their tribe than ever before. No extended family, no close-knit community, just two people locked into a contract that offers men nothing but risk, waiting to be enforced whenever she decides to end it. That's where things stand. Marriage wasn't built for happiness. It was a structure built to control property and bloodlines. And now, stripped of the old pressures and protections, the system shows its dark side. For men especially, it's simply a bad deal.